One of the biggest headlines this week is Netflix's acquisition of Warner Brothers, which is still in process. And this will have a tremendous impact on not just the entertainment industry as a whole, but also, of course, gaming, given that Warner Brothers is a major player when it comes to publishing video games. So I'm here to kind of break down this whole situation, what's been going on both, in public and behind the scenes, and what this all means for the future. So let's start with the actual acquisition itself. Netflix, as announced here by Netflix itself, is to acquire Warner Brothers following the separation of Discovery Global for a total enterprise value of $82.7 billion. They further detail here that this is valued at $27.75 per Warner Brothers Discovery share. Through this acquisition, if it were to go through, they would absorb much of Warner Brothers elements, including its film and television studios, HBO Max and HBO. And the timeline for all of this is that it's expected to be completed in Q3 of 2026. And they express their excitement at this deal because they say that it'll give more choice and greater value for consumers and a stronger entertainment industry. And those are 2 points that many overwhelmingly disagree on. Consolidation just means less competition, which means corporations of consolidated have more control and more power over how much they can charge consumers and how they can essentially take advantage of them to make more money. And then as for a stronger entertainment industry, consolidation means less competition, which is actually worse for an industry. And given Netflix's history of shutting down productions, not being a supporter of the movie theater going experience, given their myriad mishandlings of projects and some of their shadier business practices, and given their monetization tactics and business models, given their history of how they treat entertainment and projects and IPs and franchises, as well as customers, this is not something that people are particularly enthused about. In fact, if you go to Netflix's official Twitter page right here, where they announced the acquisition of Warner Brothers, the viewership here is absolutely insane. Almost 100 million views and almost 300,000 likes. News of this is obviously spread far and wide. But the top comments here are not particularly enthusiastic with, this one right here with over 40,000 likes and almost 600,000 views is just this meme of Martin Scorsese saying, well, this industry is over. And as we scroll down, it's just people expressing their disillusionment of this latest development. Another Martin Scorsese meme, this one saying absolute cinema is dead. This meme right here of Ben Affleck just being done with everything, so on and so forth. And with this acquisition, what this would mean is that Netflix would acquire all of these franchises as listed here by Discussing Film. Evil Dead being the one bit of misinformation that's been corrected here in the community notes. That's a franchise apart from the film Army of Darkness that is owned by Studio Canal, with Warner Brothers only having distribution rights to Evil Dead Rise and the upcoming Evil Dead Burn. So they don't fully own Evil Dead. But as for the rest of these franchises, this is all stuff that Netflix would absorb, which means that so many iconic major IPs and franchises would all be sitting under one corporate umbrella. That's not a good thing, especially when the corporation who's consolidating all of these franchises and IPs and companies and studios and whatnot is Netflix, with its rather infamous reputation. And to really highlight how massive this deal is, even surpasses Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard King, which was estimated to be roughly $75.4 billion. Netflix's acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery is a notch above that, sitting at $82.7 billion. A little over $7 billion more than the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard King. People are especially disillusioned by some of the statements that Netflix's co-CEO Ted Sarandos has recently put out there. It's all bullshit corporate speak that tries to convince people that the way Netflix is doing things is the way of the future. So here's what he had to say. What is the consumer trying to tell us? That they'd like to watch movies at home. Thank you. The studios and the theaters are duking it out over trying to preserve this 45-day window that is completely out of step with the consumer experience of just loving a movie. This gives off the same energy as when AAA companies are trying to convince everyone that nobody likes single-player games anymore, campaign-driven experiences. They all want just live services. A lot of people still value the theater-going experience. A lot of people still value movie theaters existing and it being part of the process of a movie's release, which is why scrolling down, you find plenty of people just completely dunking on this dude and also highlighting all of the ways in which there's plenty of proof that he is utterly and completely wrong. Just recently, in fact, we saw movies like Zootopia 2 do incredibly well at the box office during its theatrical run. It is currently eyeing a $1.5 to $1.7 billion run at the worldwide box office, making it one of the highest grossing movies of all time. And even right now, I think it's like fourth best performing movie at the box office like ever. And so people are pointing this out and mocking Netflix's statements that imply that the movie theater going experience is dead. So Matt Braley here, for example, said, wow, almost as if the head of Netflix saying theaters are dead was more about what he wants rather than what we want and rather than what is actually the reality. If a movie is desirable enough, if it's marketed well enough, and if it's something people want to watch, they will go to the movie theaters to watch it, even if it's exclusive to the movie theaters for a bit. And yeah, I mean, posts like these are garnering hundreds of thousands of views and tens of thousands of likes and plenty of people agreeing with this sentiment. The same co-CEO went as far as to say that Barbie and Oppenheimer would have been just as big on Netflix. The direct quote being, "There's no reason to believe that the movie itself is better in any size of screen for all people." I'm not saying strip away people's choice. Like if they want to wait to watch it on their TV or on their tablet or on their phone or on their Nintendo DS or whatever smart devices you can stream or watch movies and videos on, like, let them. But this narrative of trying to dominate the entertainment business by putting out false narratives about what consumers want when it comes to watching movies, this false narrative of people don't go to movie theaters anymore just to further their own corporate agendas, that's what people are taking umbrage with. Because that's plain and simply just not true. There's something quite special for a lot of people about the movie theater going experience. I mean, you look at clips of people who got together to watch, Avengers Endgame and all of the reactions that you saw as, people came together to witness these epic moments, or occasions like Barbie and Oppenheimer kickstarting this movement called Barbenheimer that involved people watching a double feature and dressing up for the theater. The reason Barbenheimer went viral was specifically because people had to show up to the movie theater and engage in, almost this like event that the community came up with, which would never have happened if those movies had just come directly to Netflix. There'd be no event to dress up for. There'd be no Barbenheimer to speak of. And yeah, I mean, people highlighting this, how the whole point of Barbenheimer was going to see a double feature and dressing up for the theater, garnered, 3.8 million views and, over 255,000 likes. And the thing is, Netflix has already come out and said that Warner Brothers movies, which once upon a time were, very much about ensuring that those movies come out in movie theaters first, how that model will slowly be faded away. They hinted at this with the following quote: "Warner Brothers movies will remain in theaters, but eventually windows will evolve to be much more consumer friendly." Again, they're trying to present their corporate agendas as something that is intended to make consumers' lives easier, when really it's just about Netflix trying to become the de facto way to watch movies. It's about them trying to take over an industry rather than serve it and what consumers genuinely want. And on top of all that, it's worth highlighting some potential hidden agendas that is being reported on, like this, The Hollywood Reporter article titled "Warner Brothers Hidden Appeal to Netflix AI Supercharger. Training data and meme materials are elements the Warner Brothers library offers that Netflix badly needs as it prepares to buy the studio." So a big part of the Warner Brothers acquisition is essentially feeding AI. The kind of usage of AI that is not beneficial to anyone, to artists, to the industry, to the projects and the artworks themselves, to consumers, and not to mention bad for the environment, and also the recent DRAM price hikes, all a result of the AI industry hoarding all of those components. And then there's the gaming side of things. It's been confirmed that Netflix will also be acquiring Warner Brothers games, which should come as no surprise. What this means is that if this acquisition goes through, again, it's not finalized, it's still in process, there's still regulatory stuff that they have to go through, which we'll get to in a bit. But if it were to go through, that means that Netflix would own studios like NetherRealm, TT Games, Rocksteady, the Batman Arkham series, so on and so forth, as well as, DC and, Harry Potter and whatever. All of the big franchises under Warner Brothers umbrella would fall under Netflix, and many are not particularly enthused by that prospect. That also means that Netflix would own the Nemesis system that was established by the Middle-earth series of games. That patent is under Warner Brothers' umbrella, and with this acquisition, it would also be under Netflix's umbrella, and people are hoping that Netflix will make the Nemesis system something that is accessible by all developers, given that it is currently trademarked But this is Netflix we're talking about. They are a corporation first and foremost. They want to have as much ownership and control over things as possible. I don't see them foregoing the Nemesis system. And then there's the history of Netflix's handling of game studios. Plenty of instances highlighting how all Netflix has done with their gaming division is woefully mismanage it. So, for example, back in October of 2024, Netflix closed their only AAA game studio before they even had a chance to ship the game. And I mean, we're talking about a development studio that had a juggernaut team, developers from companies like Blizzard, Bungie, and Sony Santa Monica, the developers of the new God of War series. And this is a development studio that was only around for less than 2 years, and they were cooking behind the scenes, but they were not allowed to finish their product. And that was in large part because not only was there a round of layoffs that happened at Netflix at around that time, but also because it was stated that Netflix wants to take a mobile-first approach to game releases, which blech. And even that strategy shift has not been going well, with them recently having shut down the studio behind the Squid Game mobile title. This was reported back in October of 2025. The studio's name was Boss Fight Entertainment, and clearly that game didn't do well enough for Netflix to feel like this studio was worth retaining. And then even more recently, on December 3rd of 2025, it was reported that Netflix has sold game studio Spry Fox back to its founder. It was acquired in 2022, but the kinds of games that this studio makes weren't in line with the new strategy that Netflix wanted to pursue with gaming. Again, more mobile-focused efforts. At least they didn't shut this one down, but the fact that they gave up on the studio so easily goes to highlight where their priorities are. And I fear for how they may potentially butcher or hold back the potential of a lot of the IPs and franchises and game studios and the kinds of projects they could output from Warner Brothers games. It feels like all Netflix is good at is wasting potential when it comes to video games, and I fear the same will happen for Warner Brothers games properties as well. Now, it's not just the general masses who are receiving this news poorly, but we're also seeing numerous groups and organizations protest against this and urging regulators that they do not let this deal, this acquisition process go through due to the negative impact that it will have on multiple industries, and due to the fact that many feel this is basically what antitrust laws were made for. So Variety reports here that a group of major industry players has sent an urgent open letter to Congress warning of an economic and institutional meltdown in Hollywood if Netflix succeeds in acquiring Warner Brothers Discovery. The letter was sent via email to members of Congress from both parties on Thursday from an anonymous collective identifying themselves only as concerned feature film producers. And then beyond that, you've got the Writers Guild of America also being fully against this deal, insisting that this merger must be blocked. And then, quote, the world's largest streaming company swallowing one of its biggest competitors is what antitrust laws were designed to prevent, unquote. And this right here has garnered a lot of support with, millions of views and, over 114,000 likes. But yeah, this kind of consolidation, this merger would make it very difficult for other entities to compete against Netflix. The argument being that Netflix's acquisition of Warner Brothers would give Netflix so much power, so much control over so much of the industry's content that it would make it incredibly difficult for anyone else to really compete against it. We have an expanded quote here from Variety's tweet, which reads, the outcome would eliminate jobs, push down wages, worsen conditions for all entertainment workers, raise prices for consumers, and reduce the volume and diversity of content for all viewers. Industry workers, along with the public, are already impacted by only a few powerful companies maintaining tight control over what consumers can watch on television, on streaming, and in theaters. This merger must be blocked. This is such a high level of consolidation. This is so much control and power that is being given to one company and so much content being owned exclusively by one company that, it would make all the issues that already exist as a result of the current structure and system of things that much worse. The elimination of jobs, the pushing down of wages, the worsening of conditions for entertainment workers, the raising of prices for consumers, the reduction of volume and diversity of content for all viewers, all of that would be further amplified if such a large entity as Netflix were to merge with such a historic, long-standing, and influential company as Warner Brothers and all the IPs and franchises that it carries. And then next up, we got the Directors Guild of America also getting involved, planning to meet with Netflix to discuss their significant concerns about the streamer's acquisition of Warner Brothers. There's also something that has gone viral with many people supporting discussions being had about a deal that could be very destructive across multiple sectors of the entertainment industry. Now, fun fact about the Directors Guild of America is that its president is none other than Christopher Nolan, one of the most renowned filmmakers of our generation and in filmmaking history, really. Christopher Nolan is someone who's been a champion of everything from physical media being more commonplace to the movie theater going experience being something that is preserved. And so, of course, it makes sense that Chris and everyone involved in this guild want to have talks about the implications of this kind of deal. And then you've got the Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA, also coming out and expressing their dissent against this and expressing their concerns in this statement where they talk about how all of this raises many serious questions about its impact on the future of the entertainment industry and especially the human creative talent whose livelihoods and careers depend on it. Now, as I've mentioned before, this acquisition is still in process and it is not a fully done deal, which is why you've got companies like Paramount who are able to come in and attempt to intercept this deal. This happened just today, literally hours before I started recording this. Paramount, who was among the companies who were engaging in a bidding war for Warner Brothers Discovery, after learning of the agreement to have Netflix acquire Warner Brothers for, $82.7 billion, has come in to launch a hostile takeover bid for Warner Brothers Discovery. Whereas Netflix is offering $82.7 billion, Paramount is hoping that Warner Brothers Discovery will be enticed by this new deal valued at $108 billion. Now, Paramount doesn't just have that kind of money on hand, which is why they're getting help from other entities and organizations like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi wealth funds, as well as Jared Kushner's affinity partners. So at this point, it does look like Warner Brothers will be acquired by someone. It's just a matter of who. And in terms of the preferences surrounding who should acquire Warner Brothers, it's a matter of who's the lesser of two evils. Warner Brothers being purchased at all instead of it being its own separate studio with its own separate streaming service and serving as competition for companies like Netflix and Paramount. That's bad enough on its own. But if Warner Brothers getting acquired is inevitable, people are hoping that at least it's acquired by the company who will do the least amount of damage by acquiring Warner Brothers. And with Paramount saying things like how, they vow to release 30 plus movies in theaters annually if it beats Netflix and acquiring Warner Brothers Discovery, saying we're going to satisfy the needs of the movie-going public, being much more publicly dedicated to keeping the movie theater going experience intact. From an optics perspective, the public seems to prefer Paramount acquiring Warner Brothers over Netflix. Not to mention, you've got folks breaking all this down and speculating what's going on and how Netflix's acquisition of Warner Brothers would be significantly worse than Paramount because Netflix, in buying Warner Brothers, would eliminate competition at a much more severe level, whereas Paramount buying Warner Brothers might potentially even the playing field a little bit between Paramount and Netflix and other entities like Disney and whatnot. The way this individual puts it, Akash Gupta, is that Netflix acquiring Warner Brothers Discovery removes the last piece that could be assembled into a Netflix killer. It just makes Netflix significantly more immune to competition. It's less about acquiring specific major IPs like Harry Potter and DC and whatnot, and more about starving competition, eliminating competitive threats. That's what this move, many are speculating and many are kind of analyzing it to be more about. But again, ultimately, we're looking at a lesser of two evils situation. The real way to go would be if consolidation didn't happen to the degree that it's happening now, if Warner Brothers remained as an additional competitive element to the industry as a whole. But yeah, beyond that, we've got reports of the government getting involved, which makes sense for any major acquisitions of this scale. You've got regulators looking at potential antitrust issues that might allow them to prevent the acquisition from going through. And so right here we have a report from the New York Post saying Netflix acquisition of Warner Brothers Studio and HBO Max would face stiff DOJ antitrust opposition. And then right here we got a report from Charles Gasparino, who is a journalist, who posted how Trump's DOJ antitrust chief Gail Slater and her senior staff are working on plans to launch a sweeping multi-year investigation into Netflix's allegedly monopolistic control of the streaming market, according to people with direct knowledge of the matter. And yeah, the current sitting president, Donald Trump, has come out and said that he does plan to get involved in all of this, saying Netflix have a very big market share, and when they have Warner Brothers, that share goes up a lot. I don't know. That's going to be for some economists to tell. I'll be involved in that decision too. But things get a little murky when you realize the potential conflict of interest that occurs with Trump's own son-in-law, Jared Kushner, being involved in helping Paramount acquire Warner Brothers. Given that familial relationship, the assumption is that the president is more inclined to lean towards having Paramount acquire Warner Brothers and helping that be pushed along while stalling Netflix from being able to do something similar. But either way, no matter how this plays out, if the end result is Warner Brothers being absorbed by a larger fish, then that's ultimately just consolidation. Too much is being controlled by too few entities who continue to grow and eat and absorb until they become too big to stop. Laws do exist to help prevent that kind of stuff from happening, but ultimately it's a matter of, what a specific administration or a specific head of the antitrust organizations have to say, or, what they think about a certain kind of acquisition and what their specific agendas are as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all of this plays out. But while we wait to see how all of this further develops, I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on the potential of Netflix acquiring Warner Brothers. And now Paramount's coming into play, trying to outbid Netflix and this whole acquisition situation of Warner Brothers. What is your take on recent developments? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.